So, Sebastian, welcome. I'm very happy that you're here in Bologna. Also because you always invite me when we are in Aachen or in the surrounding. Always we go a little bit Holland, a little bit Germany, everywhere. Okay. Fine. I think this is quite interesting because normally SCORM together with virtual reality and 3D, it's quite funny because they don't talk each other very well. So let's go and see how we can measure learning progress of VR application through the SCORM standard. Thank you, Sebastian.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Roberto, for having us. It's a great pleasure to have actually a real ILIAS conference after a couple of years. And yeah, I hope you can hear me well. I'm fighting a little bit with the microphone. And my height, usually I'm a little bit too short, but now I'm too tall. But never mind. Well, today I'm going to discuss the possibilities of achieving and measuring learning progress in SCORM learning modules. And yeah, the program will have the following look. So in the beginning, I just want to have a basic understanding of the pros and cons of 3D models. So we have a common understanding of what are the advantages and what are the possible disadvantages. And in the second step, I would like to build a broad understanding of what a basic 3D model actually all encompasses. So there are a lot of things that when I started with this topic did not know about. So we're going to have a little look at 3D modeling with Blender, which is a program that you can use to build 3D models. And from then on, we're going to move on to more sophisticated 3D environments, which are, in our case, Unity and Aframe. And then we're going to see actual learning modules within ILIAS, so actual SCORM modules that have been built with Unity and Aframe. And we're going to perform certain tasks within these learning modules. And after we performed kind of the practical demonstration, we take a look at what is actually happening within the SCORM module, how the learning progress is being measured, and what type of progresses are being measured. And we close with a future outlook and a discussion. So, yeah, to start off with the advantages of 3D models, it basically allows learning through practice. And what is a big issue is it simulates the real thing. You get a feeling. So, and one big thing is the actual so-called spatial understanding. So what we're going to see is I'm going to perform one learning module is about a basketball game, and of course it's more theoretic task, but you can actually feel, well, if the angle is not right, if the distance is too far, then I'm not going to shoot the basket. And these type of things are what are actually learning experience that you can only attain in a three-dimensional room. And yeah, and then we have some other, I would say, weak, but some other advantages that just come along. It actually makes learning a lot more fun, and as well for beginners and advanced persons or learners, supports a mobile workforce, and it also provides social opportunities and teamwork. Well, the last three bullets, you could argue that a lot of learning materials is enabling these three issues, or pros or advantages. And yeah, then I would take a look at the disadvantages. To build a 3D model is very time consuming, so, and this also leads to that it's especially costly, and if you want to have it really interactive, it gets it's a great task at hand. So, and another thing is that the social perspective is still necessary. So if you are in a total virtual environment, some certain social interactions are still needed. And this is basically a big task to build a virtual model that is also enables some sort of social enactment. As to speak, for example, in the so-called Second Life, where you have a lot of social aspects. And this, again, makes it costly to develop those kinds of learning materials. Yeah, and some experience just have no substitute, so there's no possible way to virtualize it. And another thing is also that 3D is not always the best alternative. So I found a study about anatomy students. So they were actually studying anatomy, and the test results showed that with a 3D model, you only got slightly better test results, like on a measure from 0 to 100 points, you only got like on average 1 or 2 points more than the group that studied with just regular materials, so a regular textbook. And both of these groups, so the virtual group and the group with the textbook, they both significantly did lower test results than those that actually worked with real skeletons. So this also comes in mind that there's something that there are no substitutes. And yeah, so the test results, I mean, I can also, of course, give you the study. The test results were on average 15 points better than those that studied either with 3D or a textbook. So these are the things you want to keep in mind, and just to underline the time-consuming and efforts you have to take, I want to show you this process that would come in if you actually want to have a 3D model. So you want to define the objectives for the course, then select the objectives that can use simulations, and you want to refine the selection, then choose the VR, then you build the actual environment, then you evaluate this environment, and you modify this environment, and you basically have a lot of refinements. And this is just to underline, it's a real demanding task to build a 3D model. Yeah, and then, so this is just from a theoretical point, and now I'm going to move in to have a first glimpse with Blender. So I'm going to switch here. So now you see Blender, which is basically just basic 3D modeling and what comes all along. So you can see, what you see here is a cube. You can move this cube. You can also, of course, enlarge certain things and build this 3D model. I hope I get it done. So I'm going to take this, and now I enlarge this area. So now I can basically build new ways, or I can do certain other tasks that help me to create the three-dimensional space I would like to build here. And just to give you an example of those things that have been created, let's just look at for example, at a chess game. Very simple, just a second. So we have the 3D full view, and you have here, if I type on here these X or Z axis, I get the so-called, I didn't know that term before, or I forgot about it after school, orthogonal views. So you can actually see the views that are not, that don't come along, that don't have any perspective influence. And of course you can then move in. And what is really interesting is, of course, all those things that come along with this 3D modeling. Just a second. About the light, which was another issue I would like to show you. If I look here at the model, I can actually have now turn this here back to the geometrical model, and I can also look at the model with certain shades. So it's about the shading is another issue that needs to be also incorporated if you really want to build 3D models, or you can incorporate this. So this is just a first look at 3D modeling with the help of Blender. And I'm going to show you another model. So now we're going to have another model. And what is really interesting about this is actually that you wait, let me just move out a little bit. What you see here is a cup and yeah, a blue blanket. And what now the simulation does, what is happening to this blanket when it falls down into the cup, so to speak. And I'm just going to do this, so I'm just going to run the animation, and then we're going to see how this blanket is basically falling onto the cup. And because the cup has no friction, then this blanket is actually moving away from the cup. You can see it now. I try to move in. Just a second. So now you can see I move. See now that this blanket is moving out of the cup. Animation is running quite slowly here on the bottom part of the picture, and you can see by the end the blanket will run out. And these type of simulations are of course very time consuming and take a lot of effort. So I'm just going to take these few seconds until the blanket has run out of the cup, and then we can move on to the other parts of this presentation. So this was basically quite the first glimpse, and then I'm going to move on to the other models. This is a look at the possible gamifications you can do with Unity, which is one of the leading gaming frameworks. We take another look with Aframe, which is also a gaming framework. And what we found out is that when we compare those two frameworks with each other, Unity seems to be, in a sense, the dominant option. It has a larger circle of users. It has more predefined models. And Aframe is not able to actually show or build in the model physics. Another alternative is Unreal, but it's, as far as I'm informed, a program that is only is not available as a web development program. So you can only use it basically as an encompassed program. Yeah, now we're going to take the real actual look into the learning modules. If you are now disappointed that the models are not that fancy and elaborated, it was a project of one of our apprentices, but it basically shows a lot of interesting issues that might arrive. So first off, the first task that is basically incorporated here is maze run. So this is a labyrinth, and you can actually move here through this labyrinth, and you need to find the task we built in here is to find the door. So this is the maze, and you can move inside of this maze here, and you need to find the door. The maze gets always built in new, so it might be that I'm not going to be able to find the door. I'll just give myself another half minute until I find the door. It might be that I'm just not able to solve the maze this time. Yeah, I found it. So this is a basic 3D model, and what is going to be interesting is what is happening with respect to the objectives that this learning module has. And the other task that has to be performed is the basketball game. So okay, so I take the ball, and again, as I said, what is really a big thing is that you actually know how to shoot the basket. So you learn of the actual three-dimensional aspects of this game. I know that soccer might have been the easier alternative, especially since there's no goalie in this game, but I might just happen to make one shot. I think it's going to be the last try. And okay, I did it. Thank you. I think can head off to the wine tasting now. So these were basically the two tasks, and now we're gonna look at what is actually happening inside of this VR module, and what type of data is here extracted. And what is really interesting is here, you should be able to see it now. I can start off here with the cursor. What you see here is, for example, here, right now I'm logged in as the root user, and you can see I have not made the middle basket. And this is really interesting from this perspective, that actually all the learning progress or all those objectives have to be fulfilled. In this case, the objective is to actually shoot all 3 baskets. And so I can go here on past, and I also created some test users if you like to shoot some baskets yourself later on. With respect to the maze, what is important is you can actually track the time that has been needed to fulfill the task at the first time. So these are those types of data that can be tracked, and what makes these learning modules quite interesting from a task fulfillment perspective. Yeah, and now I can move on back to the presentation. So from a theoretical point, or from what is actually happening here, is we take a look, those 3 baskets, those are the objectives within the SCO, and the SCO itself can have states like that we all are familiar with, like completed, incompleted, and we basically have can add any type of objectives. And the actual finding of the apprentice, or what is the strength, is that we built, or he built, I didn't build it, a ScormLibrary that is actually able to transfer these learning progress updates, or the learning progress in general, within the objectives or within the SCOs, pretty persistent and reliable, which is quite one of the main issues with the learning modules, that they should always be persistent and reliable, and for example not be browser dependent when they actually transform those type of things. And this is then, just to wrap it up, those things that we already saw in practice. Here, the actual time needed for the maze, which is tracked, the learning progress with respect to the baskets. And beforehand, when I actually got the commitment or the green light to make this presentation, I reached out to a couple of companies about what we are planning to do and if they were interested in joining us. And we actually started a cooperation with a company, and the findings are right now basically not really showable. But what is really interesting, what we found out, is that we actually, the way we're going to work with the company is we're going to actually go into a real game that already exists, and then we're going to add those features. So I'm just going to show it to you here. This is a learning module from a company that actually teaches on how to use those so-called agricultural machines. It's called a so-called drilling machine. And one of the issues that is always a very big issue, because they actually sell those type of trainings overseas, and is to actually put in the right adjustments in this drilling, so you actually get enough seeds or crops with the right distance and the right speed. And what we actually have here in the so-called, it's called Landwirtschaft Simulator, it's a famous game, is actually this is the way the actual machines already look in the game. So the way we want to work here is, in a sense, is not to invent the wheel new, because what you saw is to actually create 3D models or 3D environments is a very demanding task, is actually to build on something that already exists, and then to incorporate actual learning things. And the other thing is, what I would like to point out from a didactical perspective is, what I always think is interesting is you can use a basic learning environment, and then you can also have in this learning environment certain sorts of links that actually then link you to a actually two-dimensional learning module. So you just walk, so you basically drive your tractor or your machine or something, and when you reach a certain point, you get a link to a certain basic learning module and you perform a task, and this will make the learning experience much more interactive. And so this is basically already the end of my presentation. I must admit I should have asked you at some point if you had questions.
You can ask now.
You can ask
Do you
now.
have some questions?
I try to answer them. But yeah, thank you very much.
And so you made Sebastian, the perfect mixture between Italian and Spanish. Great. Gracias. Muchas gracias, Sebastian. Huh?
Is it grazie mille? Is it perfect Italian? Or?
Yeah, I understand now it's not very trendy to use the Z, but instead of the C, you need the Z. But okay, we don't use the Z. We forget it, okay?
Grazie.
Grazie.
Grazie. Yes.
But okay, the Z is not very fashion at the moment.
I learned now.
It's fine.
I learned yesterday. Michael, correct me. Bruschetta.
No, it's also wrong.
Bruschetta.
Okay, this is good.
Okay, I think we have the far left.
I have a question. You want the microphone?
Because it was basically an easier way for the apprentice to actually build this. So the actual task, I already kind of knew this question was coming, and obviously
it's correct.
And I must admit, in a broad concept of ILIAS with existing API, this might. It might be better to work with API, but for me it was more about a way of understanding the 3D modeling, and it was kind of the starting point to say, okay, we want to have this type of limited library or limited connection. But yes, in a broad conceptual, or if you look at the whole concept, ILIAS, XAPI, this might be, of course, the inferior alternative. Yes. Okay, yes.
Now, actually, there are so many people that don't use XAPI that it's quite interesting, the use of the SCORM, in my opinion. Because it's a way to start, and then you take them out of the SCORM and you bring it to the new standard. Great. Now tell me the name of this town in Italian.
I would say, Aachen?
Aachen, yeah? In Italian? Aquisgrana. Aquisgrana. It's almost Latin.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So there's so many names. Aix-la-Chapelle, Aachen.
Aix-la-Chapelle.
Oche, as we would say.
Okay, is there any other question for Sebastian? Okay, fine. So this is...
Sorry?
Yeah?
If you like to test it, here is... a temporary account here. You can go to demo 7 and you can actually have those test users. So the login is always testnutzer 2 up to testnutzer 20, and then the password is always conference.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much, Roberto.